I'm going to talk about what happens when we experience something highly stressful or traumatic in childhood and how that leads to long-term problems. So in this example, we have a picture of a grown-up who is screaming at a little child. And this kind of incident is extremely stressful. As kids, we are 100% reliant on our parents to take care of us. And when they are misattuned or angry, dysregulated because of their own unhealed wounds, as children, it's terrifying, overwhelming, and we have experiences where even something like this makes us think that we could die. And when that happens, a part of us dissociates or fragments off because the weight of the situation is too much to metabolize at the time. And so the part of us that can't handle it because of our age and emotional regulation capacity, it just splinters off and it helps to kind of insulate us from feeling the intensity of what we would experience if we were otherwise fully present for what was happening. When we have a wounding incident, this leads to not only dissociation, but some other things that lead to the long-term problems. So in this board, you can see there's a wound. Oops. There's a wound. And when there's a wound, this could be a violent car accident. This could be neglect because our parents are workaholics or drug addicts or just otherwise disengaged and misattuned, or physically violent. It could be either. Then there's a wounding, and associated with the wound, we create a story. And as children, based on our level of emotional development, we are always going to construct a story that whatever happens to us is our fault. As we develop more consciousness, more maturity, we have a better capacity to have a different perspective about what we're going through. But for the most part, when we experience something quite difficult, we feel responsible for it. So we create this story or the belief, it's my fault. This happened because I was bad. If only I were better, then this wouldn't happen. So I need to be perfect to prevent this from happening again. There's so many stories that we create as a way of creating the possibility, we think, our brain thinks, of preventing this from happening again. It gives us some kind of false sense of predictability, although sometimes it's also quite helpful. Because if we do have parents that are highly easily upset, then it does serve our highest good, our safety, to walk on eggshells and be hypervigilant and cautious to prevent them as much as possible from taking their anger out on us. So when there's a wounding event, we create a story, and then we suppress the emotions that we feel at the time. It is not a safe thing to do if we are being harmed by our parents to express our anger and to yell at them, "This isn't fair, stop treating me this way." We do that as we get older and enter adolescence, but young kids often don't do this because their mind tells them it's too dangerous to do that. And so whatever emotions we feel at the time we're experiencing something wounding, we're going to suppress them, set them aside till later when we are not in a survival state, and get back to them. But that usually means we don't get back to it until our adult life if we as kids don't have anyone to help us understand and process stressful or traumatic events. And so all of those emotions that you had to suppress as a child when you were going through something stressful are still waiting on you to process them. And then additionally, we develop a coping tool. So there's a wounding and event. We create a story to help us make sense of it. We suppress the emotions because it's not safe to feel them. And we develop a coping strategy to try to prevent the bad thing from happening again, to help us navigate difficulties. And so these are the reasons why we still suffer in our adult life, because we are still using the same coping tools that we did in childhood. If you, as a child, used avoidance, going to your room, reading books, spending time by yourself, or becoming a high-functioning student as a way to detach from what's going on in your life, then you are still using that same strategy in your life to deal with even minor stresses, avoidance. If you found that being a high achiever when you were a child got the attention from your teachers, friends, parents that your own parents weren't giving you, then you may have identified high achievement as a way to cope with how you were feeling inside. And if that's what you did in childhood, that's what you're still doing today until you heal those wounds. And so this gives you a brief summary of what happens when we experience something stressful or traumatic in childhood, how it impacts us, and how we continue to run the same story in our adult life, suppress the same emotions, use the same coping tools that we did as kids. And part of becoming a cycle breaker is to recognize that we don't need those same tools that we did need in childhood. We need to access our own adult personal power to navigate our life versus childhood coping tools that are no longer relevant. And that takes us becoming conscious to the fact that we are doing it. And then we need to heal the wounds that created those stories, suppressed emotions, and coping tools. I'd love to know in the comments how this resonated with you.